What is up, everybody? Liam Murphy here, going to be doing a two-part video. Part one, we're going to build some Underdog fantasy pick'em slips. Part two, we're going to look at my Best Ball Mania 4 exposures and some takeaways and lessons from the fantasy season. Let's do it, fam. All right. If you're new to the channel, a couple of housekeeping options, please hit the like, hit the subscribe button, helps me do this free content, and make sure you join my Discord. Link to join is below in the YouTube description. So, we are fresh off a pretty awful Thursday night football game. Is what it is, man. I mean, I kind of hope in the future, it'd be nice if they scheduled some of these rookie quarterbacks for games earlier in the season. You know, would we not be excited for a Bryce Young game back in September? Of course we would. Some of our first football. But you throw it in mid-season, we get spoiled. This is awful. We know it. 1-7 versus 2-7. So, again, if you're just catching up, going to build some pick'ems. Then we're going to look at my BBM4 exposures. We're going to look at a draft board. We're going to have some takeaways. What are some lessons we're learning? I already know some lessons I'm learning, or in my case, relearning some of the lessons. So if you're new here, we go game by game. We're going to get back to our basics. One pick'em slip, I've been having some success with this, is I strictly want to bet the under of the players who rank poorly in ESPN analytics. So yesterday I had a pick'em slip shorting Mingo, shorting Terrace Marshall. Seemed to work. If you can read up on ESPN analytics. The link for this site is in my Discord. And I have some players with probably some low props that I'm interested in. Indy at New England. We'll scroll through this one quickly, but with how unusual these, I don't know if this game's in Germany or London or what. I gotta know. I'm assuming it's Germany. Where is New England Colts being played? Germany. Yeah, I don't know how a team over on the other side of the pond could even work, because your home field advantage seems massive if you get to wait. And imagine being like 20, you get drafted in the NFL, and then they're like, all right, say goodbye to your family. You're going to move to Germany. That's tough. All right. So we're not going to take any lines. I mean, Zach Moss over. It's tempting, but JT's got a lot of the share here. Josh Downs is hurt, which makes Pittman tempting. Demario Douglas is the clear guy from New England. Bit of a red flag, though, is his ESPN analytics. Now, one thing with the ESPN analytics is maybe we can just look at it comparatively. And, this New England offense. When Hunter Henry's 109 and Juju's like third to last, I guess you're not so bad when you're 11th worst in the NFL. But worse than Mike Gesicki is not great. So we're not doing anything here. Shorting Jalen Reagor, though, does seem tempting. 6 targets, 1 catch last week. All right. Yeah, so unders only for that game. San Fran, Jacksonville, 2 teams off the bye. Should be a great game. Again, I like plenty of lines here. I don't really want to take any of the stud lines. If I was going to take one, Calvin Ridley, as much as I want the guy to be good, drafted a lot of him, and am hopeful that, off the bye, you sat out last year, maybe things get better. It's a bit of a red flag when he is ranked around names like Devontae Parker, Alec Pierce, Tutu Atwell, Mike Gesicki, Terrace Marshall, Chig Okonkwo. His open score, though, is pretty decent. So if you have a high open score but a bad overall, there's a little bit of hope. Zay Jones, I don't think is going to be back. So let's move on. Cleveland at Baltimore. Cleveland is going to be without, I think, both their tackles in this game. That seems rough. My Discord. One resource we like to look at when we build our pick'ems is the usage report. You can find this under my best ball resources. I try to post things that are helpful for you both in season and for best ball in future years. But the Browns, remember that Jerome Fort's been banged up. Season high in snaps last week. Season high in rush attempts. Second season high in routes. Came at the expense of mostly Pierre Strong. Cleveland had this game pretty in hand. Baltimore's defense is very legit. Watson hit some deep passes against the Cardinals, but I don't like him here. So, and Kareem Hunt's the short yardage back. Shorting his receptions is tempting, but, we'll move on. We're trying to pick our favorite lines. Let's go with Houston, Cincinnati. Pierce has been ruled out. T. Higgins has been ruled out. I don't believe Nico is going to play. And Tank Dell, Nico here, Nathaniel Dell here. Tank Dell is just a beast, so I think every week you could take a rival of Tank Dell versus Nico because he continues to be priced below Nico. Yeah, I thought Nico's been ruled out, but they've not pulled this line. And usually they would pull the other pass catchers' lines too. So maybe this line goes up. Maybe it's going to be off the board in a second, but we'll just move on. We don't know if Jamar Chase is playing. Joe Mixon, decent volume bet. New Orleans at Minnesota. The real, if you have a lean of who the Saints target on blitzes, taking their over is tempting. Just thinking through it logically, if you blitz a lot, either the running backs need to pass protect or it leaves some empty space for some check downs to Kamara. Don't like some deeper routes for some guys like Shaheed and gang. Foster Moreau. How much did you play last week, Mr. Foster? My favorite sweats, not from like a make money, but just a hilarious sweat is like taking quarterbacks like Matt Ryan over on their rushing yards. This is a good old time. Let's see. Juwan was at 70% of routes. Foster, 25 still. And they don't even list Taysom routes here. They probably throw him under quarterback. Well, we need his routes, so they gotta move Taysom for us. Over on Fantasy Life. We like Fantasy Life and the people that work there. Josh Dobbs with another week in the system. His rushing attempts is tempting. And just like betting Hawkinson overs until the market adjusts, pretty tempting. because this is me just like keeping it simple and copying pasting usage from Cardinals tight ends onto Vikings ones, and early results are pretty good. Addison 15 and 20% of targets. Yeah. So receptions are, I mean, what's more likely? 6 catches for less than 50 yards or 5 catches or under for over? I think I like the yards. We're going to keep the yards in there and we're going to keep it moving. Green Bay at Pittsburgh. Even I am starting to give up on Christian Watson. I will say it is a good spot for him. Oh, man. He got hurt, but now he's fine. Aaron Jones also got a lot of work last week. That was backed up by coach speak as well. Season high, 57% of the snaps, might even go up a little bit. AJ Dillon down to 40%. So like coupling some Jones overs with Dillon unders makes sense. Pittsburgh is a team where other teams typically pound the ball, but they can also lose in the air. So 20 rushing attempts for Jones last week. The only way that probably doesn't happen again is if they fall behind. So we'll move on, but we like the idea there. Green Bay also pretty bad against the run. Taking some Jalen Warren overs, tempting idea. But we'll keep it moving. Tennessee at Tampa. This is a game where I just kind of want to take some pieces from. Starting with one of my favorite players is Trey Palmer. And we'll just go receiving yards over for him. This reminds me a lot of the Noah Brown play from last week. He's run back-to-back routes of 88 and 85%. Mike Evans also was banged up a little bit. Tennessee's a team we know can lose in the air. 19.5 is just kind of a low number. Back-to-back targets of 6 and 4, 22 and 51. So I like me some Trey Palmer overs. Little bit concerning is he doesn't have great company in the ESPN analytics. I don't know what that is at all. 97th overall. But, he's around other kind of deep threat guys, such as Alec Pierce, MVS. He's at least getting open, and they throw him some screen games, and guys like, obviously ESPN analytics is not everything. These guys can have games. It's low line. On the Tennessee side, we want to bet on Will Levis a little bit. The ball leaves his hand electrically. We like it. How do we want to do it? He's not really been running, but he's playing Tampa runs a lot of zone. We know that. I think Spears and Henry are also in a split. Let's look at it. Henry, 50% of snaps. Tajay Spears, 60% last week. And the reverse for the week before. Kyle Phillips. How did he look? I know he got some work in the box score. Treylon Burks, I don't think is likely to play this week. He was carted off. He's probably going to be okay. Kyle Phillips is a slot guy. 50% of routes, 24% of target per route run, and 14% of targets. Strong usage in back-to-back week. Very catchable balls with his low ADOT and slot roll. So, yeah, let's take a Phillips over. I think for him, I would rather do receptions. Because he's not as much of a downfield guy. Maybe we short Westbrook-Akine. No, he's fine. Hopkins, if we're going to pull a stud, is tempting too. I want to do Chig as well. Just pretty good usage from him. 88, 77% of routes back to back. He's getting targets. He's kind of being underwhelming in them. His ESPN analytics score is not good, as we saw. And his real life production is not good. So his numbers seem kind of inflated for that just because of the spot they're in and what Houston did to them last week. Detroit at Chargers. Can probably close your eyes and just take Amon-Ra overs this season, and you're doing pretty good. So his receiving yards is tempting, but it's a high line. We're getting nothing on Gibbs. Jameson Williams is either going to exit the bye and, explode, get more usage, whatnot, or he's going to get less usage with Donovan Peoples-Jones there. So he's been around 45 to 34% of the routes. They're scheming targets to him. His ADOT's way down the field. I'm just going to bet that Detroit is a smart organization. They know that this kid, former first round pick, electric talent, they know getting him involved is important for them to be successful. And I'm making the bet that Donovan Peoples-Jones is more of a reflection of Marvin Jones retiring than it is an indictment on Jameson Williams. And he can do this in one catch. Laporte attempting. On the Chargers side, let's see what line they're laying on QJ. I don't even know if Quentin Johnston's done enough to qualify for this. Yeah, no. You gotta have a certain amount of targets or something to qualify for ESPN analytics. His routes are off the charts if we look at the Chargers. And the Jets are a terrible matchup for any wide receiver usually. So I'm not going to kill him for last week. He's not good. Again, 30 yards is kind of a high line for not great player. So maybe a lower there, but let's keep it moving. Let's close this game. Atlanta at Arizona. Kyler is back in our lives. Two guys who the fantasy football community is down on are Bijan and Pollard, and I kind of like both of them this week. Two pace-up teams, Atlanta and Arizona. We know Atlanta's going to run the ball. Kyler is back. Who knows what that does? Atlanta's D is respectable. And the real question with Kyler is how much is he going to run off of his injury? Bijan, been 50% of the rushing attempts back-to-back weeks. Middling targets. Decent snaps. Rushing attempts of 11 in back-to-back weeks against not great rush defenses, but better. Minnesota is a team that blitzes a lot, so I don't like to play running backs against them because they kind of need to get an outlet pass to beat the blitz. But versus a bad Cardinals run D, 50 rushing yards, 60 rushing yards. Arthur Smith could capitulate and be like, you know what? Fine. You guys want to see Bijan? Let's show you Bijan. So I'm tempted there. The Cardinals side, I think Trey McBride's a decent over, but we're going to move on. Washington at Seattle. A game with a lot of fantasy options. My favorite is probably Metcalf receiving yards. It is a high number. Washington has just gotten like obliterated by wide receivers in the Metcalf mold, aka big dudes who can catch down the field. They got done by Gabe Davis. They got done by AJ Brown twice. So they just don't have a guy who can keep up with a player of his caliber. He's a little bit hurt though, and his targets were rough last week, but we'll throw him in there. That's our first slip. Let's make another slip and then jump into best ball. If you want a tail, I'll post it in the chat. Giants at Dallas. Can't do anything on the Giants side. Maybe some unders. This is the spot for Tony Pollard. They can't stop anyone on the ground. I think we're going to go with rushing yards. And we won't touch the night games. So let's make one more slip here with some of the guys we like. We'll take Bijan over. And let's just short some of the bad players on New England. Jalen Reagor is not good. What does the snap counts look like in New England for the tight ends? Let's see if they offer a rival versus Gesicki. No, I don't see it. But Hunter Henry and Juju are not great. So we'll move on. We'll just short Reagor for now. I'm double dipping here with the Palmer over. You just got to feel some plays in your bones sometimes. And then let's double dip with Metcalf too. All right. Good luck, us. Okay, we got to add Bijan back in. Let's refresh. Wow, awesome. It went down 3 yards. Are you guys opposition betting me in mass here? Giving me 3 yards better on Bijan? Who knows? All right, let's move on. And first start looking at my best ball mania for exposures position by position. We'll look at the top 10 or so. And then we'll look at a draft board and see what we're learning. So exposure, filter for $25. And we're looking at BBM4. Okay. So quarterback, Josh Allen, bet on the elites. Great. Anthony Richardson, great process bet, bad run out. Love it. Geno, guys like Geno have gotten me a couple years where in some ways Geno's running bad. But to me, Seattle and Minnesota were just two organizations who got it. They added pass catching talent in the draft in JSN and Addison. And quarterbacks like Geno and Cousins need a lot of pass catching talent to succeed. So Geno's like game logs have been have been rough, but maybe better days ahead. So I would say though, like a bit of the pattern is this, because Gino's not a full statue, but the expensive, like, and by expensive, I mean like around 8, 9, 10, 11 or so, the expensive statue-ish quarterbacks can regress quick. So guys like in previous years, this is like Brady and Stafford. They were great 2 years ago, and then last year they were not so good, and they were expensive, and they were statue guys. So Gino fitting the mold too. Expensive, ish, statue-ish guy. Now, you can also say Daniel Jones is failing. He's not a statue, but injuries are playing there. But anyways, Seahawks schedule maybe better days ahead. They get the Eagles, a good passing game spot. They get the Titans, a great passing game spot. And they get the Steelers. I feel like that's a DK Metcalf game. And then they get the Commanders this week. Rams, not so great. 49ers, you can actually pass against. And the Cowboys is not a good matchup. But we are super zoomed in here. Geno Smith, fantasy points of, just like not great. 9, 23, 16, 8, 13, 15, 16, and 4. So, bit of a process lesson is just be wary of the expensive guys, but it's not like I went all in 13%, just 5% over the field. Goff, I could be saying the same thing for Geno, but he's just having a better year. Now maybe, Goff gets to play in the dome more and whatnot, so there's that. CJ Stroud is kind of a process thing for me, where if a quarterback is taken in the first round and looks to be a starter, especially like a high draft pick, I will be taking them. I don't watch college football. Richardson I took a lot of, just because obviously he, to me, was most likely to do what Justin Fields did last season, and the ceiling did not exist where he could easily produce like the elite guys. That proved to be right, but he got hurt. So Stroud is really helping me. Just a bet on rookie quarterback that the market was not into. Sam Howell is working out great too. This was me, again, taking a cheap quarterback. So a lot of my elite quarterback teams, their QB2 is Stroud or Howell. That's obviously going great. Howell, I thought there would be a little bit more rushing with him, honestly. Just kind of like taking what happened against the Cowboys last year and extrapolating it out. Probably not great process, but we're getting there. Betting on Eric Bieniemy, cheap starter. Other people thought he would for sure be benched, and I was willing to roll the dice on him. Bryce Young, not looking great, but it's the same. You can't have your Strouds and Richardsons if you're going to say IKB. I did think Carolina's weapons were like most likely going to be the worst of the group, just because there's enough ambiguity with Houston where it's like, oh, maybe these guys are good. I don't know. And Carolina, we kind of knew with at least two of them. Now, Thielen actually is a star this year, and Mingo's awful, the rookie. Hurts, again, an elite guy. Hurts and Allen versus a guy like Mahomes, it's always going to be Allen and Hurts to me, because, well, the way Mahomes usually plays football in past years is it's just kind of hard for him to outproduce these guys. And I thought his pass catchers were like not good in Kansas City. So I just thought, and I thought Mahomes was very fragile, where if Travis Kelce goes down, I mean, the dude is 34. What does that do to Mahomes' fantasy value? I thought he is most dependent on that, where it's like if Hurts or Allen lost Diggs or A.J. Brown, that's going to hurt them, no doubt. But we know that they're going to be rushing in touchdowns and close, which helps. Now, Mahomes has actually been running more this year, but he's still not like as big of a rushing threat in the end zone. Trevor Lawrence was me trying to take one of the cheapest guys I thought could be in the elite discussion. I wanted to bet on the Jags passing game. I thought Trevor turned a corner. He also has been pretty disappointing. Trevor Lawrence game logs. But maybe better days ahead, where the Jags are probably missing Zay Jones. Yeah, just like no games above 20 points. Just very steady Eddie right now. He gets Carolina, Tampa, Baltimore. Baltimore, not a good matchup. Tampa plus passing matchup. And Carolina, you can kind of do what you want, but it screams more of an ETN game. So not betting on ETN enough versus the Jags passing game maybe is the Trevor exposure lesson. Also, he is like kind of like just a more expensive Geno, Goff, and what have you. But first round pick. And then Hurts again is the rushing guy. So let's move on. Running backs. I don't think I did great with running backs this year. I'm doing okay, but and this is kind of a year-to-year thing with me, where just the way I draft, I'm not taking as much of the expensive guys typically. So how the late guys produce depends on a lot. Now I got some big hits, I got some misses, and I got some guys who could have better days ahead. So Charbonnet is definitely a could have better days ahead guy. He's not doing it right now. He's not done it in any game to date, but it was a bet that Ken Walker's boom bust style could wear on a coach. It was a bet on a high draft capital rookie, which, like to me, the Charbonnet bet is the same thing as the Ken Walker bet from last year. Now, maybe Ken Walker doesn't do what he did last year if Rashad Penny doesn't go down early in the season. And so that is just, that's a lesson there. Give me 1 second, guys. Gonna tweet something out. Let people know that we're on to the best ball portion. Okay. So, Ken Walker definitely trending up in snaps. We expect that with the rookie, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see if he gets some of the red zone role. Maybe he still needs a Ken Walker injury to get there, but I don't hate that pick from a process standpoint. Jaylen Warren is an okay process guy. He was a great process pick when he was cheap. It was a bet against Najee Harris, which is definitely correct. It was a bet on explosive player, which is what I want to be doing. It was a miss for me, at least, where I at least had enough concern about Pittsburgh offense, where it's like, is this guy ever going to be doing what Mostert is doing? Because I think the big lesson for running backs is if you have guys who are explosive and fast, and they have offensive coordinators you feel good about, they're on teams we know are good, you got to close your eyes and just get a lot of those guys. Where for me, I didn't draft a lot of Mostert because I was like, you know what, Mostert, he's 31. Is he going to be doing this to me in the playoffs? And I still think that answer is like maybe no. He's obviously running really hot right now. But for advancing teams, I do think getting more Mostert and not just being like, I'm going to choose Achane and Jeff Wilson. And then at the end, I wasn't taking enough Miami running back. So the miss on the Miami running backs is definitely hurting me in best ball. And I think is also a lesson where close your eyes. I mean, ambiguous situation, right? We didn't know who the starter was, so that's good. And then, so like Jeff Wilson, I'm at 11%. Mostert, I'm at 5%, and most of those teams are like late August. And when it was like clear he was the starter. And Achane, I'm like 9%, where like I went up and down with him. But yeah. Tony Pollard, honestly, Tony Pollard's season's been really weird. I think he's a major positive regression candidate. I will say, I had the thought in the offseason of, he got hurt last year. He in the playoffs, and I don't like the play caller in McCarthy. I think it was a downgrade in play calling. But I was just like, you know what? I'm betting on an explosive guy, I thought. And so ignoring his downgrade in play calling, ignoring his injury and what that might do, was probably not the best thing. Now, I'm still happy with this Tony Pollard, like my anchor Pollard teams, because I love the a lot of the reason I was in on Tony Pollard was their schedule, which to me looked awesome in the preseason and still kind of does for the playoffs, where their playoff games are the Bills, Dolphins, and Lions. And they're in the Dome and in Miami, only one game with potential bad weather. I just thought this was like a very nutted schedule for running backs potentially. I didn't think I liked the Bills one going into the season, but now a bunch of injuries have happened where the Bills are like check down city for running backs. And the Dolphins D is not great against the run. The Lions D is actually pretty good, but it's in the Dome. And against better teams, the Lions team's not been great. So I don't think it's a huge miss for me on the Pollard thing. I do think, though, I should be a little bit more wary when a guy gets injured and not just like put on the blinders. Tank Bigsby obviously is not doing great. And like looking up his RAS profile, I don't think he profiles as an explosive guy either. He 4.56 40, 1.56 10 yard was actually pretty good. Good NFL size. Now he's been like just like brutally bad, which is not great. And ETN's been very good, but Tank Bigsby was me buying into the Doug Peterson to running back system, me buying into the reports that Tank Bigsby could be the short yardage guy. I also knew, and I said this on stream several times, where Tank Bigsby was like one of the more fragile guys we were taking. And I felt this about a lot of the mid-round running backs, where I just knew he was drawing live to be a 0. I like to swing an upside. I think thinking through what type of upside bet this was is important, though, where, like Mostert upside is he breaks an 80-yard run. Boom, explosive play. Tank Bigsby upside to me was he steals red zone carries and falls in the end zone twice in a game. That's not as great as an upside. Obviously he could have grown to he could have been like a Charbonnet where we're like, a bit better second halves, but not a great pick results wise, process wise, not the worst. I don't think he's a great guy to like 3x the field though. Gainwell, Penny, Swift. I really like how I played this, and honestly, I wish like this. If I could just like replace these three guys, if it went like the Philly guys and the Miami guys, I think that's a great way to play it. Where it's like me being like, you know what? I do not know who is going to emerge from Philly. I have an idea, but I do know this is a team that's going to produce running back production, even though Hurts gets his. And they play the Cardinals week 17. So just like very similar to BBM4, where I drafted a lot of Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, and this won me the contest because they played a very bad Detroit run D. I thought for sure the Cardinals had a bad run D, and this is a team that can just like ice this team on the ground. It's kind of like we've seen Gus Edwards do. So stoked to have these exposures. Still think Philly is a team that's going to smash the Cardinals week 17. Still think that's great. And just a reminder that like zeros do not hurt you as much as hits help you. So you can carry a Penny, a Gainwell if you hit on a Mostert. You can carry a Bigsby, whatever, if you hit on Swift. Damian Harris, not great process. I don't think. I thought he was a good running back. I didn't, he obviously got hurt, which is going to hurt him. But he was very similar to the Tank Bigsby bet, where I don't want to be making as many of these bets where it's like his outs where he gets 3 rushing touchdowns. Now he has that revenge game against the Patriots week 17, which like maybe that's tournament winning if that narrative is true. But yeah, I just, and I've said last year, it's like we do not want running backs from Buffalo. We just don't. Josh Allen's there. They pass too much. Neither of these guys are like world-beating talents. I started the draft season out on Cook and then bought a lot of the offseason reports. So, yeah, Damian Harris, not great process, not great result. Very similar to the Tank Bigsby bet. But I thought Damian Harris was better than Singletary. So there was like a chance. Kyron, is obviously a smash from a results perspective. I also think he was a really great process pick where he was a guy not being drafted 100%. He was drafted a lot in 20-round formats by the end, and we know the market struggles with strain from ADP and drafting a 20-round guy versus an 18-round guy. It was a starting running back I wanted to short a lot, Cam Akers, for so many reasons. And we've seen them all, injury prone, Achilles injury, fights with the coach, probably not good. I thought Kyron at worst was like a James White type of guy. Off-season reporting on him was incredibly great. He was getting used in practice. He was getting the reports of Stafford throwing the ball and catching touchdowns. So I liked him as a stacking partner with Stafford. And then B, he didn't play any of the fucking preseason, which is an incredible woo. Maybe the coaching staff values this guy. Now, different coaching staffs, that means different things for. But hey, guy's not playing. Coaching staff probably likes him. And we had the Schefter report last year where he knew he was starting Kyron because he thought the coaching staff really liked him. And then the dude got hurt. So Kyron, great pick. He's hurt. He's going to be back by week 12. And it's it's carrying a lot of my teams, right? The Kyron teams. Ramondre, again, I don't think was great process where I actually viewed Ramondre and ETN as kind of similar bets. I wanted both, but I thought, and Ken Walker, I wanted all three of these guys, just guys who I thought the market was disrespecting. I do think and I took Ramondre because I thought he was good. B, I thought all the other guys on the Patriots sucked. So that's probably good from a pass catching perspective. I like betting against Zeke. I didn't draft any other Patriots though, which is I knew the offense was going to be bad, very bad. I just thought he could do James Conner things. It's a little expensive for what it is. Maybe he has better days ahead. He's getting targets. He ripped off that long touchdown. But being more even on him and ETN, I think, is better, where ETN, unquestionably the better offense, more explosive. We knew ETN ran bad last year. So, yeah. We're just going to be talking about the top 10, but the rest, pretty good. Betting on rookies, I think. So, yeah. Wide receiver, again, definitely a lot of lessons here. The Gabe Davis pick, I like to have. I think it's good process, good results. He is what he is. He's a boom bust. I think it's not even questionable that Kincaid is the 2 in Buffalo now. I think the people who are oh, he's doing it without Knox there. Just do you guys watch football? Just see what Kincaid does, see what Knox does. Knox is not going to impact Kincaid at all. But me taking nearly 40% Gabe means I'm not taking Mike Evans as much, Jordan Addison as much. I'm also not taking guys like Tyler Lockett as much, which, feel good about. So I like the Gabe pick from process. Just betting on a good team. Kincaid did not have to be as good as he is, so we live with that. And again, I've said this a lot in my Discord. Taking big stands on a player or two is one of the easiest ways to get a lot of teams to the BBM4 finals. Where, when it's not Gabe Davis and it's those guys, boom, I lose. Just like every other year. But when Gabe Davis goes for 30 2 weeks in a row, weeks 15 and 16, all of a sudden I could have 4, 5, 6 teams in the finals, which is absurd, right? The year I won BBM2, I had 1 team in the finals. I had 6 teams in the semifinals in back-to-back years. There were several people with 3 or 4 teams in the finals. And the only way that happens is if you have either insane playoff luck, which is pretty unlikely, or more likely you have a narrow exposure pool and your guy's smashed. Darius Slayton, I think, was bad process. He was free. It was a good process in the sense of this is an offensive coordinator and coach I want to bet on, or mainly the coach in Brian Daboll. That was good. I also knew he'd be on the field a lot. That was good. I don't like how many of the downfield guys I took, though, in the cover 2 era, where, sure, Rashid Shaheed is a hit for me, 15%. And, is the bet that different, Rashid Shaheed versus Darius Slayton? Yeah, I mean, maybe for Shaheed, you could say better quarterback. Maybe you could say he plays in a dome more. He was a rookie. So that is all better for Shaheed, second-year player. But it's probably not that different from Slayton. But it's just kind of hard to get these Slayton, MVS types, whatever, even when they're cheap, to be strong fantasy assets. I think the real lesson is just like, maybe this year is a tad bit of an anomaly, but just taking the expensive rookies in terms of not draft costs to us, but draft costs in the real NFL draft. So there were plenty of second and third round rookies that Slayton could have been instead in ambiguous situations. Guys like Tank Dell, Michael Wilson, Jaden Reed, whatever. So yeah, don't love the process on Slayton. It's not great results either. Obviously, he's ran bad with the injuries to the Giants O-line and quarterbacks, but it is what it is. Kirk, good process, good results. Yeah, he's a hit. 4th or 5th round cost. Is he ever going to win you your league? Probably not. But I just knew highly paid player, passing game I want to bet on, ambiguous enough situation. So yeah, JSN, process-wise, betting on a rookie, good. Most expensive rookie is negative process. Also, 2 legit NFL starters beside him in Metcalf and Lockett is not good. Now, you could have said the same thing for Jordan Addison. However, one of the NFL starters that Addison was competing with was a tight end. So, yes, in target share, that could have hurt him. But in playing time, we knew Addison would see the field. And, Seattle's just got a lot of mouths to feed. They got the 3 wide receivers. They got the 2 running backs. So it just makes it tough. Mike Williams, awesome process, awesome result until he got hurt for the season, is what it is. Diggs. One of my better calls was taking Diggs at the 106 in drafts. So almost always, I just didn't take Kelsey. I didn't take Eckler. I'm going to lose when those guys have great playoff weeks. But regular season right now and process-wise, it's looking pretty solid. Chase, whatever, first round pick. He's ran a little bad. Bigger days ahead for him. Isaiah Hodgins is another. Just taking too much of a wide receiver from a bad team. It was a bit of box score chasing for me. I kind of stopped taking Hodgins by the end, but it was kind of box score chasing where it's like he did really good last year. I did think he competed a little bit with Darren Waller as far as like where those targets could go, like middle of the field type stuff. So yeah, just taking too much of a wideout from a bad team. Michael Thomas, I stopped taking him by the end, but I don't hate it. Reporting started like pretty good for him. And then it went kind of like iffy. So it was a decent process where he was like cheap enough. I was like taking him over like Quentin Johnston. And he's only has 1 touchdown, I think. Yeah, so that's not great, but he's not been hurt. And a lot of people were fading him because he was hurt in past years. And I just kind of was like, you know what? He's burned enough people. I just think he got unlucky on injuries. And so I think most people's thesis of fading him was, oh, he's going to get hurt again. That's not happened. I did think, though, that even though the Saints had an easy schedule, there was a lot of competition for touchdowns. You got like 3 tight ends. You got the other wide receivers. You got 3 running backs. So just a lot of mouths to feed is maybe not the best. But, I don't hate it. Christian Watson is a strong process, bad result. You could argue his quarterback situation was too ambiguous and Jordan Love could just be that bad, which I guess he kind of is. But, he didn't play to start the year. He hurt his hamstring. He's still getting – his underlying numbers are still kind of fine. And yeah. Tight end, Tight end and quarterback are my two biggest hits. Really smashed tight end, where Kincaid looking like a massive win. I've said this before, but me taking a lot of Dawson Knox last year versus me taking a lot of Dalton Kincaid this year for like the same draft cost was just like wildly different bets. Where Knox's bet is, hey, most tight ends usually take a while to come on. Maybe it clicks for this guy this year. And if not, he's attached to the Bills. He could fall in the end zone twice. Now, Knox actually last year was a guy you wanted in the playoffs because he got touchdowns in the playoffs. But taking a boom bust touchdown guy, not the best. Kincaid, though, first round rookie. The Bills claimed he was the best pass catcher in the draft, which literally might be true. Tank Dell, the only guy with better ESPN ratings. Tight end eligibility, first round pick again. So like this is a guy who could legitimately be good, like a actual star. Is cheap. He was so cheap when I did that Kincaid Revention episode with Karain. He was like a 13th round pick. It was absurd. I wish I didn't say anything and I just kept on lapping him up there. So great process, good results. Yeah, having a heavy exposure to a tight end at a high variance position can burn you. But also, if Kincaid goes touchdown, week 15, 16, I could have 20 teams in the finals. Like who knows what the limit is. So love this exposure. I did not think it was shocking at all. He was going to be a slow starting guy. Just when you're on a team that's been in the playoffs for years in a row, it's kind of hard for a rookie from like day one to just be like, all right, Dawson Knox, like I know you were with us and we probably should have won a Super Bowl with you. But we're going to let Kincaid have a shot. And so I don't think the Knox injury matters at all for Kincaid as far as like what he did in these past couple games or going forward. Hawkinson's been a hit. Just with as many busts there are in best ball, but I don't think the process was actually perfect from Hawkinson for half point PPR specifically. PPR, it's a little bit of a different story, but my main thing with Hawkinson is I did not think he was an explosive player, right? I didn't. I just thought he would get a lot of targets. He was on a passing attack I wanted to target. It was ambiguous enough where like Jordan Addison didn't have to be good, right? And so like all that process is great. I thought he was drawing very live to outscore a lot of the wide receivers around him, which is literally happening and true. So that's good. But we know we need to start 3 wide receivers a week. So like, how does that change the equation? Another thing hurting Hawkinson a little bit, which this does not have to do, I mean, maybe some of this is process, is specifically how good some of the late round tight ends are. In particular, Kincaid, Laporta, Ferguson going forward to me, a little bit of Schultz and Taysom is hurting Hawk a tad bit. Laporta, smash pick by me. Honestly, like, I should have more Laporta where I felt good about him. I really thought he would be the second target in Detroit. So good process, good result there. Dawson Knox, just kind of like a little bit of a hedge on Kincaid. I also thought that Kincaid probably didn't impact Knox that much, which was true, but his talent level was in question. He was cheap though, so what are you going to say? Kittle, I like to draft the expensive guys. He's had some weeks. Good process. Fine result. Waller, you could say the process is worse on Waller than a guy like Kittle. He got more expensive by the end. That's not when I drafted him. I drafted him when he was cheap. I just thought he could be the engine of his passing attack, and I didn't think the Giants would be this bad. Not many did. But, questionable situation, not great quarterback, has had injuries in the past, and is happening again. Schultz, great process, good result. The process was mid-round tight end. I like to draft these guys. Ambiguous target competition where like he could have just been the top pass catcher. He's been fine in past years as a volume guy. And then we got lucky where like Stroud is just better than people think. Everett Bett's not too different from Houston, although the target competition, and he's never been as good as Schultz. He was cheap enough. Higbee, again, is like very similar to the Everett Bet. Taysom, after having like 20% Taysom last year, I had less this year, and it was mainly because of My concerns with just how many mouths there were to feed in Houston, but he was so cheap on half-point PPR. I'm going to go to the bathroom, guys. Please hit the subscribe button, and then I'm going to look at a draft board, and we'll just go pick by pick. All right. Thanks for bearing with me. Hope you guys enjoy this content. I'm a plan to do something more in depth when I launch my site, breaking down the past year. But good to touch on this now. All right, so let's just look at a draft board here and see how the picks are doing. Let's look at this one. We're in first. Why not? Yeah, I mean, to Jimmy's point here, the biggest thing I liked about Kyron is I knew he was going to play, or I felt that way, which I didn't know for guys like Samir White and Travion Williams and whatnot. So, Justin Jefferson, CMC, Chase, Tyreek Diggs. Again, I faded Eckler and Kelsey, mainly age concerns, and Eckler's had a lot of usage. Chubb, I also faded, just thought there was enough questions of the offense, and he didn't seem like, seemed like an expensive Derrick Henry. Bijan, I went at the field on Bijan, and I think that's the right way to play it. He, he could have gotten the goal line work in another universe. His playoff schedule is still good. AJ Brown smash. Like, some people were fading AJ Brown because of Devonta Smith, and they had passing concerns about Hurts. I took a lot of Brown because I knew he was an explosive alpha, and that's what I want. Cooper is what it is. Saquon, yeah. I mean, Saquon, again, is like, I had enough Saquon, but we had concerns about the offense, expensive, a lot of touches on him, whatnot. Lamb, Garrett Wilson ran bad with the Rodgers injury. Pollard, again, this is like a question of what to do about the injury and whatnot and the play caller negative, but I still kind of like the pick. Now we get into like a different part of the draft where we're just kind of placing a lot of like iffy guys. Jalen Waddle was comfortably the wide receiver 2 on his team. It's a good team, but who should be the pick here? And it probably should be the elite quarterback, specifically these 4 guys. Olave too, I faded more than the other players. I just thought there was like, it was not guaranteed Olave was going to be an alpha over Michael Thomas, I thought. Again, all the weapons of the Saints make it a concern. So I didn't take as much Olave. I kind of viewed him as like more expensive Christian Watson somewhat. Olave's had a fine year. He's not a smash pick or anything. Devontae Adams, I largely faded. Major questions of the offense. And this is like cheap Devontae Adams in August. He was more of a pick around here is when I faded him. Devontae Adams for me, all these players I had ahead of him, but I would have taken him at like 17 if I was on the clock. So I didn't have like a hard fade on Adams. I just rigidly viewed all of these players as better bets. Tony Pollard plus specifically. And yeah, like I think this is a good process thing to fade. Is like, sorry, if Jimmy G is going to Smash. Okay, I lose. Josh Allen, again, Underdog continues to disrespect elite quarterbacks in half-point PPR formats. And the way I did this with taking Diggs at 5, I also did this with A.J. Brown sometimes. Yeah, I mean, Diggs was my 105 once the Cup injury happened. He was my 106 before the Cup injury. And for me, it kind of went like Diggs, A.J. Brown, Bijan, Amon-Ra, and then these two guys who I just didn't get a lot of. Allen, great process pick, good result. Mahomes, again, I thought was a very fragile bet compared to Allen and Hurts, just not expecting rushing. Kelsey was old, is old. Higgins, again, we're just like placing wide receiver 2s there. He's like, some of these guys are like running bad too. Derrick Henry, I think a fade of this is fine, but what were you fading him for? Maybe we should have asked ourselves a little bit. Andrews and Lamar, I think, are good bets. Hurts is a good bet. Smith, clearly probably the 2 there, although that was like a little less clear to some people. Ridley, maybe better days ahead. His underlying numbers on ESPN Analytics is concerning, but Zay Jones impacts it. The Jags have also just kind of had some weird games. DK Metcalf, you could say maybe should not have been ranked so high ahead of like Lockett and a first-round rookie in JSN, but the market just did it. I really liked his game against the Steelers, though, and so that's why I drafted some of him. Jacobs, just a bet on last year. Seems fine. Like Jacobs versus Adams is a little bit different than me just because of cost. Gibbs, half-point PPR, you could say something about, but, who you're taking. Cooper, I pretty much faded, just thought he was a little expensive. Keenan, I faded at the expense of Mike Williams. In another iteration, maybe that works. But yeah, this should be, as someone that likes to bet on offense like me, I was a little bit concerned about Keenan's hamstrings. I don't know why I tried to play doctor with that. So I should not have faded that, and he's looking like a fine pick. Debo is fine. Maybe you could say he shouldn't have been that much more expensive than Ayuk and Kittle, which I think is fair. Ramondre, again, offensive concerns. DJ Moore, offensive concerns. Justin Fields, offensive concerns, but he's a quarterback. Christian Watson, offensive concerns, but I liked it. ETN, no offensive concerns. The rookie could suck. He could get more. He ran really bad on touchdowns last year. Ken Walker, in an ambiguous situation. He's a fine pick, though, right now. Ayuk was not a 4th-round pick always. He was like a 5th, 6th. No offensive concerns, just the cheaper Debo. And a guy who, like, a lot of people knew was talented. Joe Burrow is a quarterback. Mike Williams just ran bad. Breece Hall, betting on talent. Just betting on young talent on a probably good team, which the Jets would have been with Rodgers. Mixon, I faded. You have all these legal concerns. You have concerns that Joe Mixon's a piece of shit, allegedly. And he's not been good. He's like he's like Najee on a better offense. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't draft Mixon. I would never have drafted him, but he's okay. He's been doing okay in fantasy. Najee, just like the clearest fade to me. Most likely bad team. Not sure the gap between him and Warren was warranted. Just like you're betting on him just getting a lot of carries, which I don't think the signs were there for. Hopkins, I largely faded when he was a Titan. Thought that was a bad situation for him with Tannehill. Will Levis being as good as he is, or maybe he is, maybe we'll save him. But yeah, again, betting against bad teams, something I like to do. Drake London, I started as a fade, but then kind of just like listened to some of the talent scout nerds and was like, all right, I guess, maybe Ritter's better than he is, but again, offensive concerns. Herbert's a quarterback. Deontay, offensive concerns, got hurt. Aaron Jones, offensive concerns, and old. JT is just a whole unique situation. But I guess like a lesson with like JT, Kamara, etc., is take all these guys because it's very rare that someone sits out the NFL, which I bought into a little bit more than I guess was realistic. Hawkinson, again, we talked about Hawkinson. Hawkinson and Kirk were like my clicks a lot here when Brees was gone in 4-5. And they look like good picks compared to the other players, and that's just kind of like the byproduct of the market. Dotson, offensive concerns, target competition concerns. I think a lot of us were betting on a second-year player who, ESPN Analytics didn't have him in the best company last year. But he's doing better now. Darren Waller, again, we already talked about. Dak plays quarterback and also was really reached on in this draft to match with Pollard, I guess. But he was usually down here. Pierce, I think Pierce ran really bad with all his O-line getting hurt. This is typically a team we want running backs from or coordinators. Like, the coach of the Texans is like the coach of the 49ers and the coach of the Dolphins as far as what scheme they run. They don't have the O-line for it. Maybe Pierce isn't the talent for it. I don't think he's like as explosive. And so that's standing out. But yeah, not sure about the process on him. I guess you could just say like offensive concerns. Second-year player, I want to be betting on those. Madison, I faded. Feel good about it. Yeah, he just was like very bad last year. And so when guys are like that and then expensive, and I'd rather bet on the passing games, I fade. Terry, whatever. Kittle, we already talked about it. Lockett has been like quietly disappointing. But so have a lot of guys. Like Pickens, probably quietly disappointing. He was fine before Deontay. Offensive concerns. Cooks was just like, I started as a fade of Cooks, but then started to take him some. He was cheap-ish as far as like wide receivers go, but he's old. James Cook, again, like we probably don't want these running backs from Buffalo. I started as a fade, but then got there when he got steamed up. Like I started taking him a lot in the 8 and 7, but then stopped in the 6-5. He closed as like a 4th-round pick or something insane. We don't want running backs from Buffalo unless Josh Allen gets hurt or they're like transcendent talents. Mike Evans is smashing. Just like Baker can't be that bad is probably the lessons. He's the same, very similar lesson of Amari Cooper last year, where it's like, and like Amari Cooper last year is Mike Evans this year and Hollywood Brown this year. Just like we know these guys are talented. The offensive situation is probably not as bad as people think. Chris Godwin, more of like a PPR volume guy versus a down the field touchdown guy. Probably should have led you to Mike Evans over Chris. Gabe, we already talked about. Who would you want if not Gabe in this round? The only guy really is like Mike Evans. George Kittle, maybe. J.K. Dobbins just ran bad on that one. I took him to stack, obviously. Trevor, again, we kind of talked about Trevor, expensive. JSN, expensive, ambiguous. Kyle Pitts, offensive concerns. Zay Flowers, I guess just like half-point PPR fit concerns. Goddard, I thought like when Goddard opened as like a 5th, 6th pick, and I thought he was one of the worst picks on the board. He used to be more expensive than Waller, Pitts, Kittle, like right after Hawkinson. I thought he was a clear fade then. As he got cheaper, I added more. But, expensive tight ends, they catch touchdowns in the playoffs. They can win you tournaments. Judy, again, was a clear fade to me in the 3rd round, where he was most of the draft season. I just thought he wasn't good. I did not want to bet on Russ at all, and that's seemingly good. I did start taking him some, though, in the 7th and 8th, which is also a good process. Like, if I'm fading a 3rd-round pick and they drop to a 7th for something that's probably not a good reason for, you should take some then. Miles Sanders, I guess the biggest thing you could say is like offensive concerns and talent concerns, but guys like Miles Sanders have hit in the past. Him versus James Conner in the years they were bad. It's like that different. Yeah, I don't know. Addison, rookie, good process. We want the quarterback. We knew he was going to see the field. Again, like him competing with Hawkinson versus JSN versus like two other wideouts changes the equation. Pittman is a fine pick. Javonte, fine pick. Cam Akers. I started it on Cam Akers, but then, I faded just as like I thought about it more. Because I wanted the running back from the Rams, but then I was like, no, it can't be Cam. Quentin, the market was right to be skeptical of. I also, maybe I kind of want to watch more tape next year because I watched the tape of Kincaid and I was like, what are other people not seeing? I also watched very few college games, but one of the games I did watch was Quentin Johnston before I even knew he was a first-round rookie, in the college finals. And I watched the guy and I was like, that dude is slow. And then people were like, no, that's QJ. He's going to be a first-round pick. I was like, I don't know. That does not look like an NFL wideout to me. So I'm going to add tape clip watching of rookies to my process next year. Hollywood is the lesson of Amari Cooper from previous years. This was the clearest, August casual people were never going to draft Hollywood Brown, and usually sharp drafters did. Montgomery betting against a pass catching back on a team with a good O-line. James Conner was the volume bet. So cheaper Najee Harris somewhat, but without a clear RB2. Ran bad to get hurt, obviously. Sutton's been sun running touchdowns, but taking the cheaper option makes sense in an ambiguous situation. Kamara, again, fading the suspension concerns, betting that he just gets some of his juice back, which I guess has happened. He's been doing good, but I don't know. I don't know about the process of him. And I don't know how concerned I am to not be having him. I think last week's game is a good reminder of it can be Taysom. It can be so many guys. And Kendra and Jamal could have been better. Rashad White, there was no one behind him. So he's just James Conner, but working, I guess. And he's also was younger, second-year player. Kirk and Deshaun are quarterbacks. I faded Deshaun for Joe Mixon reasons / it was possible he doesn't have it anymore. Pacheco versus James Cook is a discussion where, unlike Buffalo, we have seen running backs in Kansas City produce. The other running backs are probably not good and or old in McKinnon's case for Pacheco. So a bit of a lesson there for me to not fade him as much. It's not been a great pick or anything, but I was out on so many pieces of Kansas City. I was out on Kelsey. I was out on Sky Moore. I was out on Tony. I took Rashee Rice. I took MVS. I took McKinnon. I should take him more. Pacheco, though, I think just ambiguous. He started as a 6th-round pick, and that's why I was like, no, definitely not. And that was right. But when he dropped to the 8th, probably should have gotten more, and I did get a little bit. Sky Moore, yeah, just when someone is very bad their rookie year, that's signal. Swift, just smashing. A guy I've always drafted, and so I wish I had more in high stakes, honestly. I just didn't draft as much. When I was towards the end, I was oh, it's not Penny time. It's Swift time. But Penny still got outs. Dalvin Cook, yeah, just when an old vet is terrible, don't buy him. And there's a clearly better player, Breece Hall. Herbert has been running bad. Burks probably running bad. Maybe talent concerns, offensive concerns. Gibson, I was Brian Robinson over Gibson once they flipped in price. Dylan, offensive concerns, talent concerns, whatever. Elijah Moore, same. Richardson was a smash. Freiermuth over guys like Kincaid and Ingram, no. Even Njoku, probably not. But the Freiermuths and Njokus versus like Kincaid and Ingram clearly give me this side. Better teams, maybe better. Like Kincaid's a first round pick. These other guys, like Njoku and Freiermuth, you know. So Tank, we already talked about. Tua, yeah, just like pricing up the quarterbacks that are, when your wide receivers are explosive in Tyreek and Waddle, they can carry Tua to some elite games, is a reminder for us. Unlike when your wide receivers are, I don't know, like who doesn't have explosive pass catchers? I don't know, like throwing to Chris Godwin versus like, you know what I mean there. Michael Thomas, we talked about. Rashad Bateman, I don't know. Target competition for like, I thought people were wild in thinking Lamar would start passing for numbers like Josh Allen and crew. Like, we're probably never going to see that rookie year again from him. B-Rob, just a bet against Gibson, a bet again on a second-year player, a guy who got shot last year. The bet's not that different from Warren, but he was like more likely to be a bell cow. Romeo Dobbs, I thought, was a very bad pick. He's had some games, but that coincided with Watson being out. And he's like kind of like Sky Moore. He wasn't good last year. Warren, we talked about. Boyd, just kind of getting older. Charbonnet, we talked about. Nico, I drafted a lot of Nico when he was a 13th, 14th round pick, but I stopped in the 10th round. And maybe I should have paused and been like, there was a reason I was taking him, and that was because I thought he could be the top pass catcher of a rookie quarterback. And so not caring so much about a 3 rounds in draft cost is probably a decent reminder, even though that's typically like decent process. Players also rise for a reason. And maybe I should have zoomed out and been like, who am I afraid of here? But the real reason I didn't get a lot of Nico is I took a lot of quarterbacks, tight ends, and running backs in these ranges. Mostert, yeah, I mean, by the end, it was clear he was a hit. Maybe I should, just close your eyes, bet on the explosive guy on a good team that we know can run the ball. And yeah, we'll finish out the 10th round. Zay Jones is running bad. Marvin Mims, offensive concerns, but like, rookie, fine process. Njoku, I thought was a really different bet than like Kincaid. And yeah, he's like okay, but he's not a Kincaid, a Laporte, or whatever. OBJ, again, like the Ravens thing. Just like some of these guys were probably going to hit, but a lot of them were going to be zeros just because it's hard for so many passing game weapons to get there. So, honestly, that's going to be it for us today. We did a lot. We made some pick'em slips. We looked at my exposures. We looked at the market and talked about pick by pick for the first 10 rounds. A couple of things I want to close with are, please hit the like and subscribe as always. Please join my Discord if you want to talk best ball with me. Link is in the YouTube below. And then this year, unlike previous years, it feels a little bit different to me, I just think that we're going to see a lot of shakeup in advance on which teams are advancing, both because we're getting some guys back from injury. We're getting Achane back. We're getting Kyron back in a week or two. And then we're going to lose the Cousins teams, the Daniel Jones teams. We already kind of lost the Richardson teams. But like the injuries are going to start being felt a little bit. And then just with how many cheap guys can hit ceilings, Tank Dell, Shaheed to a lesser extent, Kyron Williams, Achane, Mostert, with all these guys that can just like put up huge performances, it can really flip it on a head. Not to mention the typical of like, if Chase goes for 50 in a game, that changes advance rates. If AJ Brown does, we've already seen it with CeeDee Lamb, quiet first half, 2 big games, changes a lot in the market. So it's an exciting time in best ball land. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great weekend.